like it or not, the men, provide, and the women provide the nurturing of the children and growing the family. Um, and there has been so much in society, telling men to squash their masculinity and they can't approach a woman. And if they're going to flirt with a woman, that's sexual harassment. And it's not. I mean, it's plain and simple not. That just goes back to how humans interacted with humans prior to social media, like,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean, so, I mean, you actually had to talk to a person and that was okay. And you didn't have to worry about getting, canceled on.
Tell
So,
me about it.
yeah, we're very grassroots in how we, go about that. We're very emphatic that, you've got to take it back to the basics. And when we talk about flirting, a lot of our clients are very leery. They don't want to come across as creepy. They don't want to use, like the pickup artist approach. They don't want to make a woman feel uncomfortable. They've really gotten a lot of fear instilled in them, especially with the Me Too movement, where they're like,
Oh, yes.
I don't want to even interject myself in a situation where something could be misconstrued. So what we tell them with flirting is flirting is not doing something to a woman. You are inviting her into a moment with you.
Mhm.
And it's about making her feel something rather than, again, doing something to her. You're inviting that playful interaction and you're just kind of seeing how things progress. And it's not always going to lead to the next step, like getting her number or going on a date, but you're building that social muscle to where you can have that playful kind of banter that naturally comes as you practice it more and more.
So you believe that the guys should focus more on the genuine communication with the females without the um, incentivification of a date progressing from that communication?
Yeah, go into it without any expectation of an outcome, because when you do that, even though your intent is not to come across that way, but we have found that when you go into it, like, I hope I get a date or I hope she gives me her number, you can have an unrealistic expectation. And if it doesn't go that way, you're really hard on yourself, or you come across a little bit too needy or clingy or desperate. And that's definitely not
There
the
it
look
is.
that you're wanting to
I
portray.
was I was holding on that statement because I was about to be like, "Yep, you're gonna look like you're extremely desperate,
Hmm.
and like hyenas, they can smell fear." So
Yeah, you
if
sense
you
that
walk
something's
into that
off.
conversation, not they're gonna reject you on the cusp of they can sense that you're needy.
Hmm. Exactly.
So, what tools do you utilize to get men to redirect their attention towards confidently communicating with no expectations of reciprocation?
So we have them focus on really, steering away from like the generic compliments, making something more specific and unique to the woman that they're speaking to, whether it's something relevant about the environment they're in, something unique they notice about her, maybe something, her personality or something that she did or a book she's holding, making it very, you're not making comments about her body or,
Right.
oh, you're so hot. Women hear that all the time, and
Yes.
you're not going to
I've
be.
been telling people that's not a good thing to do. The over complimenting, and then from a male's perspective, I've come to understand that those types of compliments, telling a woman that she looks attractive, stems from a sexual desire. So you're filtering out your desire to sleep with the woman and then compliment her instead, which she already recognizes that, and it's happened too many times today. So
Mhm.
it's not actually received by her in a positive light. And then also at the same time, if that's the only thing you could think about, you should probably keep that comment to yourself. So um, I have been telling men that it's not good to provide those particular types of compliments to women, just telling them, "Oh, you're hot, you're beautiful, you're attractive." I'm not saying if a woman is not genuinely beautiful to be able to let her know that upon approach that you did captivate my attention, but that's not saying, "Oh yeah, you're so hot, I like the dress." Like because you're really just saying, hey, she put on something that's she probably should not have put on if she's getting something other than your attention from her skill set and her capabilities. You can't
Mhm.
find a female's mindset by staring at the dress that she's wearing. You know,
Mhm.
I've been discouraging that. Also, I've noticed that the next generation of young women are overly sexualizing themselves based on their attire. So the negative attention drawn by that type of attire will get that negative response of a compliment based on lust instead of a compliment based on genuineness. And what is your perspective on that?
I totally agree. And something we tell our clients too is you can't put women on a pedestal, because when you do that, you're already, trying to attain this seemingly unachievable goal. And women are just humans, just like men are. And we're just looking to make connections. And, you know, I think that is what tends to psych men out too, is they are just like, oh my gosh, she's so attractive. She would never be interested in me. And it's like, well, you don't know until you try. And you do your best by not focusing on her looks and finding something else to connect with that's, on a deeper level. That's really what's going to make you memorable.
I agree with that. I have been telling people on both sides that you can't put the other person on the pedestal and then chase that fictitious position. You
Mm,
recognize a person that's on your level as somebody who can do for you the things that you can do for yourself. Therefore, you should not be trying to overachieve in order to receive recognition from the other person, because that level of overachievement could be unrealistic expectations, which you yourself would not be able to maintain for an extended period of time.
And
Go
you
ahead.
have that honeymoon period too, where everybody thinks the other person's perfect. And then you have that first argument, or you get into a real world situation, and you don't want to have that huge fall where you're like, this isn't the person that I thought I was dating. You're
Well,
both human.
the honeymoon period comes from two things. One, ignoring the flaws in the
Mhm.
relationship and the other person. Another thing that comes from is the lack of standing on your non-negotiable expectations for
Mhm.
behavior. Because if you knew what you were expecting from this person, when you first started talking to them, your pet peeves, your standards, and you ignored all of that just to be with this person, these are the things that you don't like, that you're bypassing because you quote unquote love the other person. And
Mhm.
then when you have gotten used to that person, now you're expecting them to conform to your original expectations, where you've allowed them not to conform. And now you're trying to force what will turn into a rebellion, them to change to something that they should have been from the beginning if they were willing to, coupled
Mhm.
with pretending like you're something that you're not to impress the other person, and then trying to maintain that behavior until they have committed to your existence. And then when they have committed and y'all settle, you stop putting on that performance, and now
Mhm.
they get the real you, which is also another issue. Because if I thought I was dating the person that you've been for the last 90 days, and then you gave up on that, and now you're starting to show me your true colors, and those are not the colors that I prefer, that now forces me to adjust to who you are now, because I've already invested a whole season into you, which causes a lot of resentment and disarray. So I say put your worst foot forward, ironically,
Yeah.
because if this is the worst that it gets, it's only uphill from here, as opposed
Mhm.
to pretending like you're way up here, and then like Aladdin with the lamp, when you lose the lamp, you go back to the bottom, and now she has to accept the street rat. Just start from the bottom and work your way up. If you're not overachieving at the beginning, you have room to grow. If you start at a diamond, you can't go down to a cheeseburger. You got to start at a glass of ice water and work your way up.
Uh,
you know. Well, what's your perspective of that?
I agree. We, in the week and first week or two of working with a client, we really take a deep dive into not only defining their ideal life, but the type of person and partner that would fit into that. And so it's defining we call it your like to have qualities and your must have qualities, and really not deferring from that at all, because like you said, it's just a recipe for disaster. If you start, you know, getting lax on one quality that is really, really important to you, just because you're so enamored with whoever you're dating, it's not going to work out long term, and it's just going to lead to heartbreak. And it's, to me, it's better to know these things up front before you get overly emotionally invested, because once you are in, I've been there, where you're years into a relationship and you realize, hey, this isn't working. I'm growing, I'm bettering my life. My partner isn't, he's stagnant. And I feel bad because we've, gosh, it was 7, 8 years, and it's hard to, disentangle all of that by that point.
One of the things I found is that women and men are different when it comes down to stagnation. Men fall into a rut because of consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So once we find something that works, we stick with it. Women fall into a rut from complacency. So they don't have to apply to maintain what's going on. Now, those driven women that are aiming for something more will continuously force change. The driven men that are not satisfied with where they are will continuously force change. You're going to find more driven men that are single than driven men that are married, because the goal of getting married comes from the goal of being successful enough to attract a woman that will say yes. So that's kind of a spearhead. The older you are and the longer you've been single, the harder you're working towards that success. Men typically abandon all of their goals, dreams, and ambitions for this one relationship, which I think is the worst thing that a man could ever do, because she was attracted to your drive to succeed, and then you abandon that because you found what you're looking for. So you have to find a person that's supposed to mesh with your agenda and motivate you to continue to move forward. My mother used to tell me, find somebody better than you and then bypass them and motivate them to be better than you at the same time. Because if it's a competition on which one of us can be the best in the world, we're always going to be pushing each other to achieve new heights, instead of one of us plateauing and then the other one settling. And if you found somebody who settles, where they are beneath your ambitions, not beneath you, because people find a person on their level right now, but you're not happy with where you are right now. If that person plateaued and you have not, and you continue to move on, the other person is going to continue to be left behind and continue to become dead weight. And that person you're going to resent because you are not able to achieve with them, but you wish that they would be. And coupled with the other group of people that are waiting for you to be successful for them to come and talk to you, it's a very hard dynamic, because if you didn't earn this, you're not supposed to get anything out of it. So waiting for me to be financially successful is not beneficial to me, because now my question is, what did you do to deserve what I'm about to do for you, when you could have been here building me up to this point where you would have been entitled to the entire estate?
Mm-hmm.
What's your perspective?
I agree. I mean, we can't dictate when we're going to meet the right person,
Right.
But like you said, we can only focus on ourselves. And I think that's the best time to be available to meet somebody, when you're not relying on that person to fill some gap in your life. They're just adding to your life and you're adding to theirs, and it can come in any way, shape, or form. My husband and I, we met in college. So we were two broke college students, but we were both extremely ambitious. And so we grew together, which is a lot of fun to think back to, like, where we started and where we are now. But, if that had been not equally yoked, it would have been a whole different scenario. But, having that same drive and that same skill set and goals and life value mission, all of that really just meshed well. And, I think depending, I live in the South, I grew up in the South, and I think it's regionally different, but growing up, it was like you graduated high school and you got married, you had kids, and you finished college really young. And I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, seriously, if I could go back and change things, I would not get married. And I don't think anybody should get married until they're at least 27, if not 30. Yeah, I tell my boys all the time, like, don't get married. You can date all you want. Don't get married until you're 30.
Isn't that funny how we do it differently with the boys? We tell the girls, stay single until you're 50. And we tell the boys, hey, play the field until you're 40. And that's a contradiction in and of itself, because as men, we would not want our daughters to be the target of the behavior that we perform as men. So now to the magnitude, I'm telling men, hey, go find the one that is not out there looking for a good time. The same one that I'm telling my daughter to be the one that is not out there looking for a good time. That way it kind of starts being more uniform, because if the men are only providing attention to the wild girl, and then all of the girls who want attention start behaving wildly and making bad decisions, you start having a very compromised dating pool, because when you're looking for a girlfriend that is wife material, you're not going to find that, because everybody's behaving inappropriately in a nightclub, acting like a frat house, and you're trying to find your essential soulmate or life partner in this crowd of mischievous individuals. Which brings to the question, exactly where would be the safest place to look for somebody that's got long-term ambition?
Not a bar and not a club.
I say all the time, do not take your partner to a bar or a club for a date.
No. It's just a recipe for disaster. It's not conducive for conversation because it's too loud. It's usually overstimulating. And, like what you were saying, the same thing goes like with the bad guy scenario. Women tend to want the bad guy when they're in their 20s, but they don't want to marry the bad guy long term. They just, need to get that out of their system. But ultimately, that's not who they want to build a life with. So I tell my clients, if you're just naturally inclined to have that type of personality, that's fine. That's you. Embrace it. Do whatever. But 9 times out of 10, my clients aren't like that. And they're very genuine, and they're wanting a family, and they're wanting to provide. And they're just very defeated because they're like, all these other guys are out there, playing the field, and I'm over here, can't get a date. And I'm like, no, you just have to keep, putting yourself out there. Yeah. The best areas really, I think, are just where you can naturally strike up a conversation and it doesn't seem like you're out preying on women. So a bookstore, a coffee shop, volunteering in your community, church, if religion is important to you, that type of thing.
So guys, if y'all want to get this list, it was on Thursday's show, 2 weeks ago on Friday's show, and 3 weeks ago on that Thursday show, and another one 4 weeks ago on a Saturday show. This exact list of places that you should probably be looking for more exactly what she just stated, which I find that enthusiastic, because I've been piecing this together. Like, I didn't think, this is a good place to go and pick up a single person, but I'm like, yeah, you'll find a better quality individual in these scenarios. And then you were able to ratify that information. So I think that was impressive. We were on the right track without all of the information. It's been a slow grind and a slow build. I have been telling individuals that it's not a good idea to go out there with that player mentality, because like you said, it does give off the perception of preying on women. And some of those women have been conditioned through social behavior to take advantage of that, whether it's intentional or accidental, because guys are going to use their wealth to attract a woman. So the goal is, date me, I've got money. I will pay for the most expensive dinners. I'll pay for the most expensive events. I'll get you VIP passes to this place. I'll fly you somewhere. The better the offer, the more likely she will say yes. And the problem that I have with that particular type of approach is that she's not saying yes because of you or your character or your personality. She's saying yes for the opportunity to go to this place and experience this adventure without having to pay a dime. And that dynamic leads you down a path where she might go places with you frequently at your expense, but she's not committing to you. She's committing to your wealth. The moment you go from 5-star restaurants and expensive VIP passes to the drive-thru at a Taco Bell, she's going to no longer be interested, because she wasn't interested in you. She was interested in the activity. So in order for you to find the genuineness in the other person, you would have to first find out if she's willing to not enjoy your wealth and still enjoy your company. And likewise with women, Go ahead.
Oh, I was thinking I have a lot of my clients do very well financially. And I had one client recently in particular that comes to mind because um he was older and he was very, retired, had a lot of time, had a lot of money, and he was spending a lot of money on these first dates with women. And I said, I would kind of keep that closer to the vest. It's
Mhm.
great that you're so generous and you want to take these women on these experiences, but try just a simple coffee date or a simple lunch date and see how they respond. And then if there's a true connection there that's not tied to the experiences you're giving them and the money that you're spending, then you can be more generous and you can talk more about, what you do for a living and your investment properties, all the things that you're excited to talk about, but people with the wrong intentions are not going to, have the best of responses.
Of course. I understand statistically, men over the age of 45, closer to 50, 60. You said he was retired somewhere between 65 and 72. The men are 40% richer when they're single because
Mhm.
they spend 41% of their estate on women through the dating phase. From
Yeah.
from the will you go out to me to I'm sorry, ma'am, he's dead. He has spent more than half of his income for the entirety of the relationship on her, which is when I ask women, what do they bring to the table to deserve to be financially supported for their entire life, outside of providing lust for the man? Because the fact is that his entire life is dedicated to taking care of you simply because you went on a date with him. And then I ask men to start gauging the value of worth of what she is willing to do outside of the bedroom that aids you in your success and your ability to be successful. But then that led me to that perspective, like you said, the men are capable of being more generous because they have more wealth under their belt and they're not sure how else to present themselves because their personality is not perceived upon first contact. It is the car that they're pulled up in, the outfit they're wearing, the neighborhood they're seen in, the house they just walked out of. And that is where the average woman is judging the man. What do you do for a living based on the prestige of the job? What do you do for a living based on the quantity of income that you make? And the younger generation of women are not paying attention to the character of the man or the personality of the man. And I tell a lot of the ladies that come to the show, I'm like, think about it. You've got some pretty rich guys like Nick Cannon with 14 baby mamas, and you've got a lot of single guys like Chris Brown with 20 battered women. And these are rich men that could pay for 20 women at the same time with no problem, versus the average individual that'll work at a restaurant or manage a department store or a teacher or somebody with a regular job under 75,000 a year, and that person would cater to your every need, make sure that you're not hurt, make sure that you're not wet, make sure you're not sick, and really prioritize your needs. And I tell women a lot of the times that if you're looking for it, but until they're looking for it, they're not going to pay attention to this. But when you're looking for the person that is supposed to be the last person, that person is supposed to have the good character and the good qualities that you're expecting to have from a lifelong partner. But while you're out there playing the field, which the younger generation typically plays the field until they're 30 or 35, and then they try to squeeze in that family life between 35 and menopause. And the men who are family driven are not worthy of a woman by status until they're over the age of 45, because it takes 3/4 of their life to build that wealth for a woman to say, that's the finance that I want to see. We've got a lot of comments in here that I completely missed out. Hold on, we got Dark. He said, Sarah, are you aware? Oh, okay. So we're going to have to, I see, we're going to have to block this person because I told you that there's every now and again inappropriate individuals that jump onto the podcast. So again, back to it. We are communicating with individuals that jump in and start trying to date with the wrong generation. And when they're with the wrong generation, they're not finding the right person. They're finding the wrong person that is not beneficial for them. And that's when they end up with that cross dynamic. So I think what I was trying to get to is that if a man is looking for the genuine connection with the woman, because of the women looking for the financial security, they're going to be looking for the older men, and the men are actually going after more younger women because they're looking for the women that are still capable of producing the family. How does the cross gap, because a 45-year-old woman is okay with dating a 45-year-old man, but everybody that I have heard from are disassociated with the idea that a lot of the older men are starting to date women that are about 50% of their age plus 7, where like he's 45, she's 27, he's 52, she's 29, 31. What is your perspective on that?
That's, the general rule of thumb we give is, half your age plus 7. But we have seen so many, on complete opposite ends of the spectrum where there's, a 20-year age gap and, or a same age dating, or, just a couple years difference. So it's really just about vetting your potential partner along the way and just making sure every step that you're taking, you're keeping those core values at the forefront of your mind and making sure that this person is truly a match. Once you get into your 20s, there's obviously, big age gaps, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's more of a transactional relationship. But I feel like once both parties are in their 20s and they're both consenting adults, age truly can just be a number. But there are, your overall guidelines that are good to follow.
And here we go again with, there we go. Yes, I have. Special shout out to Carl. I was just about to go into another tangent. Carl, special brother. Please, this is Sara. She is a pro on the dating culture, and I don't know if you've been able to follow through. Hopefully your family's doing okay. Special shout out to them real quick, because I know you've been looking after them. If you've got some questions for Sara, ironically, I knew that this was going to be a fantastic show today, but she has co-signed on 85 to 94% of the things that we have been talking about on the channel for the last year and a half now. So this has been fantastic. That not because she agrees with me, but because she's bringing a deeper perspective to the stuff that I've been talking about without me realizing that, hey, I thought I was on the right path, but it's that confirmation that I know that I'm on the right path kind of thing. So had I been like steering the guys wrong, I'd have been like, man, I'm gonna have to rethink the dynamics of my podcast, right? I'm gonna have to scrap half the season. But no, from a woman's perspective, because I come from a direct line. And Carl says hi. I'm coming from a direct line from the male's perspective that in order for us to aim for higher valued man to be in the capabilities of attracting a higher valued woman, that the dynamic is going to have to, like you said earlier, be strict towards not allowing any individual to compromise your integrity and your expectations. And then that makes it a requirement from a masculine perspective that non-negotiable expectations requires you to say, look, you're going to do it the way I want to do it, or you're not going to be here. Now, some women are going to be critical about that, but those aren't the ones that are looking to be led. Those are the ones that are looking to dominate. And in a relationship, a woman that dominates her man is not going to have respect for him if she's looking for a man to lead her at the same time. So while some women might enjoy trying to dominate their men and then being put in their place with that man where they recognize that he is going to be the leader, I think that that's not an appropriate behavior. But some men allow themselves to be dominated by the woman because they don't want to lose the woman. And I'm like, bro, that's not going to work. So when we've been talking on the show, we did a whole show about the age gap, and we had a couple women come in and negative comments like the ones we just had earlier, and they tried to make it seem like we're male chauvinists because we're clearly saying exactly what needs to be said. It's like, look, the age gap is not an issue. Women say, the ones that don't want us to talk about this, say that the age gap is an issue. And the age gap is only going to give you different mentalities, because women mature faster than men, because men are playing video games until they go out there and start playing, going to work. Then when they start going to work, they're only focusing on going to work to have fun before they start going to work to build a family and build a relationship. Women that are driven to settle down and find happiness are going to be driven to settle down and find happiness, and nothing, including lust, will redirect them from that goal. Women are more successful in college because they're not distracted by lust and entertainment. Women are more successful in their careers because they're not distracted by lust and entertainment. Men can be driven until they're distracted by a woman, and it's not her fault that he's distracted. But since he's distracted, like I told you earlier, he's abandoned all of his ambitions. Everything is out the window. Then he makes a mistake. Now he's getting fired from his job. Now he's got to start over, and these are the things that lead to men being cautious and fearful. But if they were paying attention to their goals, making sure that the in the moment decision that they're about to make will not compromise their 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan. And then if you're meeting that woman that's younger than you, because a man can continue to safely create children. I've done a statistic on that. We found a man that lived to be 130 years old with 216 children, or 230. Seriously, it was a black man from the slave trade, and he came out of slavery and still had 9 more children with his current wife. But he was one of those breeding scenarios where that's what they were doing back in that day. And he successfully created over 230 something kids, including the 9 kids with his wife after he was released. And I'm like, no man is going to be able to get 200 kids from one woman. Statistically, it's 1 per year. And if you're starting from the legal age of 18 till menopause, you might get 18 children, but women typically are going to quit around 5, maybe 10, if you're one of those big family cultures. But the average American woman is going to be like 3. The pain of that, you get 4. She's a saint. 5, it's like, nope, I'm not doing anymore. So when you're talking about trying to build a family, you got to look at the span before menopause. Then you have to look at how many children she already has, how many children she's willing to have, because most women in the modern era are starting to have children younger because of poor choices, not deliberately having children, which is the way things used to be back in the day, where they got with a person young and started having children because they thought it was going to last, and then it didn't. These are having one-night stands and cheating on their partners, and now there's children involved, where these are literally mistake children, not deliberate children. And now you're dealing with a single mom that has 2 to 5 kids, and she's in her 20s, and you have to ask yourself, is she willing to have more kids? If she's not valuable to you. If you want to have more kids, then you have scenarios where if they're like 35, 38, you're not trying to pressure her to have kids for you. You want kids. That woman that's 35 to 38 is less likely to be the one that you're going to date, because you're having to deal with the 2 to 5 years of the relationship development before kids start becoming a thing. And that 2 to 5 years could lead her passing menopause and not being capable of having children. And you're not going to drop the chick because she's no longer willing to have kids or capable of having kids, because you love her now. So your goals and your drive, this statistical and really logistical analysis of the dating field is one of the reasons why men are more focused on like 25, 27 and saying, let's see what we can manifest here, because 5 years will still put her under 35. I can still have 2 kids. And, the dynamic there, like you said, it's like, if the woman's okay with it, there shouldn't be a problem with the guy. But real quick, Carl said, women and men are bringing different things to the table. And Carl follows up with, when they think they can bring the same things to the table, that's the problem, because God built us different. Oh, well, yes, that is true. The idea of a woman fulfilling that role that men do, and then considering themselves valuable, like the women that are financially successful, and they say, well, I'm a catch because I have gone to college, I have a good job. But those aren't things that men want. They want somebody who's cooperating. They want somebody who is driven, but they don't really care if you have like 8 PhDs, because you could have been a high school dropout, but you're willing to help me run this business, and that makes you perfect. You know, that's the difference in dynamics. So my question is, since you literally checked off all the boxes of every type of woman that would be able to succeed in finding relationships and sticking to that, what is your perspective of the younger generation that probably would be your kids' age at this point, that are now out there dating? Because the complexity of the dating pool is that those individuals over the 18 are in the dating pool with those individuals still trying to find love in their 50s and 60s. And the lack of restriction of age, especially with social dating, increases the quantity of options, but it also increases the quantity of rejection. What is your perspective of that?
It is a real valid problem, because, you know, even it's like the endless option dilemma, you know, with the swiping culture, with the dating apps. You know, people are so quick to move on to the next dating partner or marriage partner, because they're like, you know, I can just get on a dating app, or I can go out and meet somebody younger, prettier, you know, whatever the case may be, when they don't put in the effort to make the current relationship work. And I think, you know, I was a teen mom myself, but there's so much, you know, allure with like the teen mom shows on MTV, where it's almost like, you know, hey, I could get pregnant when I'm a teenager and be famous. Well, the 30 or 40, you know, people that were on that show represent a small amount of teen moms out there in the world today. So
12%.
You know, yeah. I mean, it's like using that as a life goal is not good.
It's horrible, because your decisions are going to change once you start having children.
And they affect the children, and, you know, you're a product of your environment. And I think that's a lot of why, you know, people struggle with dating is, you know, when I grew up, you know, my mom stayed home, my dad worked, and that's how I grew up. And all my, you know, everybody, that's just how it was, with, you know, a small percentage of people that got divorced. But, you know, there's a reason why it's so important to have a mother or a parent in the home, you know, where the kids aren't, you know, brought up, you know, as latchkey kids. I know a lot of us were still, and we were just fine, but just because we did it doesn't mean that it's ideal. So, you know, there's ways around it too, because I mean, I've always been very entrepreneurial and, you know, a go-getter, but I knew that there was a time and a place for everything. So when I got married to my husband and we had our 2 youngest children, I knew I was going to take that time off from work, be a stay-at-home mom. And then when they were more self-sufficient, then I could re-enter the workforce and kind of fulfill that area. But yeah, you know, it's just, I think you just have to find somebody that, when it comes to marriage, at least somebody that truly values that unity and is not willing to just throw it away at the drop of a hat the first second, you know, there's a problem. So it's really just, you know, going through all the tough questions, finances, what are we going to do about religion, politics?
That's a good scenario. When is a good time to start those conversations? During the dating phase?
You know, you don't want it to be like an interrogation or a job interview, but start sprinkling in. I give my clients a list of like key conversation topics as you're vetting a relationship and getting more serious. So by, you know, about the 3rd date, start sprinkling in some of those questions, not just rapid fire, but just, you know, hey, what are your thoughts for the future? You know, do you want children? Do you not? Because I think it's great even when people realize they don't want children. You know,
I think it's fantastic too.
You know, you shouldn't ever do it because you just feel like it's expected. Right. If you don't want that, that's equally as great as somebody that does want a family. But, you know, finding a partner, like you said, who it's like, oh yeah, I don't want kids either. And then you get married, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, by the way, I actually do want kids. That's what
I,
you did to you.
I had a fan that came on a show a few Sundays ago, and they were telling me the story. And it was a lady. She was complaining about her husband, and I get a lot of those, and I'm indifferent about them because it too many of them paint the wrong picture. But her complaint was that she got with this guy. She's been dating him for 2 years, and then he sprung on her that he wants to have children. He bought the house, a bigger house. He was a single dad when she met him, and now she's like in the stepmom role, and now he wants her to have children for him and expand on the family. So he bought a house big enough for his daughter to have her own room and still have a room for a nursery and all this other stuff. She doesn't know how to feel about this. Now, as she's explaining the dynamics, she mentions that he said on date 2 that he wants to continue to have children, but he abandoned that position because she said that she didn't want to have children yet. Now, 2 years into the relationship, he's still saying, I want to have children. We've gone through everything we're going to go through. Now we're building finances. We're starting to establish the house. With this house comes more children. She doesn't know how to feel about that. Now, I said, if you knew that the man wanted children and you didn't want children, why did you keep going past the second date? A lot of people thought that I was wrong for feeling that way, that you should compromise. But there's certain things in life that you can compromise, and there's certain things in life that you cannot compromise on. And if a life goal is to reproduce children, getting somebody who doesn't have that same life goal is not going to mesh well, because eventually one of you is going to have resentment towards the other because one of you are going to be forced to abandon that life goal.
Right.
The difference between where we live in life, what size house we get, these are things we can compromise, what color car we drive. But whether or not you bring another life into the world, that's not something that is easily compromised. I did find a solution to that dynamic, and I think it was like a month and a half ago. I'm like, wait, we've got this technology. We can create children using surrogates. You can find a woman that doesn't want kids, use her DNA and find you a surrogate, but you got to have the money to do all of this stuff, to have the kid, have the second generation, still have the wife who didn't want to bear the child. As long as she's willing to watch the child, you kind of got it all under control. But that's a more complex scenario than the woman that's like, okay, we're going to work through this and we will do the children thing eventually, just not right now. We're not financially stable. But then here's the question. When is the right time to have kids? Because kids are usually not planned. They're expected, they're hoped for, but they're never planned. So with that conversation of children being created eventually throughout the relationship, when do you believe that it is reasonably in the scope of mentality for a woman to say, okay, I think we've got enough under control right now where children are okay, even if we're not literally putting forth the effort to watch the paternity clock and all this, that, and the other to create those children? What do you think?
I don't think you're ever like mentally going to feel that there's a perfect time to have kids on either end of the spectrum. There's always going to be that question mark in your mind, like, should we have more money? Should we have a bigger house? Should we live in a different area? But if you both are on the same page, you both want children, you both are willing to put in the effort to raise the children together, you've got a stable home, got a stable income. Of course, anything can happen. But you both have the commitment to support each other along the way, regardless of what life throws at you, then I would say that's a good starting point. Because, you're not guaranteed anything in life. I was 7 months pregnant with my youngest, and my husband, his company got bought out and he was a mass layoff. And we're like, okay, so can we get insurance until the baby's born? So there's never like a guaranteed perfect scenario, but we had tried to, we had planned out our youngest too, but there were still, like, you always have those thoughts. Am I going to be a good mom? Am I going to be a good dad? And
Guys typically think about, can we afford this?
Yeah.
And we think about that from the first date, is like, can I afford to pay for her for an extended period of time? And then when you bring the kids into the fold, it's like, can I afford them?
Yeah.
And then with that, here's another question. Since a lot of the times women expect or prefer men to be the breadwinner, where they're bringing home the majority of the capital, if not all of it. When the men have to put in extra time on the job to make ends meet, they're not available to the woman in the relationship, which ultimately means they're not readily emotionally available to the woman in the relationship. What kind of advice that you have for seemingly both men and women related to how to handle that particular aspect of the relationship?
I think it's really important to remember that you're both, even though you're contributing different things, both emotionally, financially, physically, it's for the greater good of the family. And the family is a singular unit. And the moment you start nitpicking about, like, well, I watch the kids all the time and I make all the money and pay all the bills, you're not operating as a singular unit. You're operating as two individuals who have separate goals. And that's
Right.
where I think it really drives people apart, because you're entering into this new phase of life where you've never raised a child before. You're both likely sleep deprived. You're stressed out. You're worried about, am I going to damage this kid and cause him or her to have therapy, 20 years from now? So you're not in your normal, rational headspace. And so at least, you know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Usually around the time the kids are 5, things settle down. If you
It's a short tunnel at 5 years.
Yeah. In the midst of it, it doesn't feel very short, but you know that your life isn't going to be like that all the time. And there's an ultimate goal, which is creating that family together. But, so it's, just recognizing that even though, your contributions are different, they're both equally as important. And making that time to connect one-on-one as a couple, getting a babysitter if you can, getting a little weekend getaway. If you can't find a sitter or can't afford a, childcare like that, then you would, maybe put the kids to bed early and cook dinner, just the two of you, and eat the dinner alone, watch a movie, find a way to connect, conversation cards, if you will, just a way to connect outside of being parents. Remember and remind yourselves why you dated each other, and date your spouse. You can't stop dating your spouse.
That's actually very fantastic. I didn't think about the cooking dinner part. I mentioned the other things. I mentioned, getting babysitters. But when I said get the babysitter, I came from a logical and rational perspective. So hear me out. Mom's usually at home taking care of the kids. Dad's usually at work working himself to death. Dad comes home from work, gives mom a break. Now dad's watching the kids. Then when dad stops watching the kids, dad goes back to work. Mom's watching the kids. Dad almost never takes a break. Now, get the babysitter and try to get you a pretty lengthy babysitter.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is so that you can go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I didn't even think about. Oh, let's rekindle. Let's do this. Like, no, just get you some rest, bro. Just tap out, not think about the kids for like 8 hours, and then go back and let the babysitter go. But that actually is a fantastic recommendation, is to really rekindle the relationship and remind yourselves what got you into this in the first place. Because okay, so there's two things there. You forget where you came from in your relationship, but you also become complacent to the fact that there's somebody always there. So now you're more duty bound to the relationship, not emotionally invested in the relationship. And that sometimes develops a level of resentment, and that also sometimes causes the dissipation of the emotional connection between the two of you, which leaves room for more arguments and less cooperation and compromise, because you forget that love is a choice. It's not just a feeling. And
Right.
you choose to be in love. You choose to be in this relationship. And you have to remind yourself, and you have to remind your partner as to why you put up with them the same way they put up with you. So I think that that's a fantastic idea, to get a babysitter and like have a date night without the kids kind of thing, because it tends to be very stressful in the relationship. I had a question and I forgot what it was. Because that was actually phenomenal. Let me see if I can draft it back up here. You mentioned that you mentioned that it is important for the partners to pay attention to each other in the relationship and remind themselves of the value in the relationship. So when you're dealing with a lot of your clients, which areas do they have the most trouble with in relationships?
Making that initial approach. They psych themselves out before they even say a word. And so whether it's been they have little to no dating experience at all, or they feel that they've gotten rejected a lot in the past, there's that wall up where they're like, I don't want to get rejected, or what if she, isn't responsive to me? And so we give them the 3-second rule, that if you see a woman that you want to approach, you have, the skill set that we teach you, but then you count to 3 and you just go do it. And regardless of the outcome, you did it. And that kind of starts to desensitize you to actual rejection, because you realize that you lived through it. You didn't die. Life went on, and, onward and upward, because to me, it's like the universe's way of just letting you know very quickly that that person isn't the best fit for you. So, all right.
I think that's probably one of the hardest parts about it, is that men learned from their youth. And we have this, that there's a different question I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you that in a second, because that's going to kind of like spin things. But the men keep trying to win the girl over. And when you said 3 seconds to get in there, and I was sitting over there thinking, well, back when I was first talking about this, I was like, give them like 3 to 10. And if they're not showing you positive reception, like start looking for your exit plan, start trying to respectfully and appropriately, like remove yourself from the situation. If you're not giving the positive cues, where she's not attempting to make eye contact, the lack of smiles, she's not the body language where she's not like facing you, she's kind of looking like she's trying to get away from you kind of thing. If you're not seeing that positive reception, you shouldn't even be trying to make a second attempt to convince her to acknowledge your existence, because like Job under the tree, the women are seen before they're engaged. So this is not first contact for her. It is second contact for her. It's first contact for him, because he's been there the whole time watching her and she never noticed him. And now that he's talking to her, now she's noticing him. But he noticed her long enough to compel him to go over there and go talk to her. So now that you think that this is the type of person that you might want to get to know, if the attitude and the responses are not satisfactory, the I got a boyfriend objections, the no out the gate before you even understand like exactly what I came out here for. It's like those are the signs where you need to just walk away from that scenario, because even if that could have turned into a long-term relationship, I don't believe that type of relationship, pushing past rejection to acquire the female, is going to be as successful as the type of relationship where she recognized that she had interest in you in the beginning, the same way you had interest in her in the beginning. Not necessarily on the same level, but the fact is that there was something about you that wasn't your wealth that she wanted to find out about, or there was something about her that you wanted to find out about as a man, and that led to you guys exploring each other on a reasonably balanced playing field, which led to a long-term relationship. What do you think about that?
I agree. You don't want to have to convince somebody to want to date you. The energy should be matched. And like you said, it's not always going to be the same wavelength, but if you're the one that's doing all the texting and you're getting one-word responses, that doesn't seem like it's a good fit. And, where you can come across, same thing where if you're flirting and heavily tying that to an outcome, a specific outcome that you want, you're coming across as desperate, needy, clingy, not a good look. Same thing when you're approaching and, if you're getting those signs that she's not interested in it, you keep pushing and keep pushing. It's either going to cause a negative reaction out of her that could be pretty public, depending on how loud or angry she wants to get, or other people, may recognize that and be like, ugh. But it's also not going to make the man feel good about the dynamic either, because of those reasons. You're either going to get a negative reaction, or you're going to have to really backtrack heavily to get yourself out of that scenario, when you could have just been like, it's been nice talking to you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. You walk off, you've got your dignity in place, and nobody would think twice if they were, privy to that conversation taking place.
That is definitely a good concept to go across. I have found one of the main reasons why modern men are no longer doing the initial approach, and a lot of men are starting to talk about on social media right now that women should be responsible for first contact, specifically because of the way women say no. What is your perspective on how you believe women should turn a man down versus the way they currently are turning men down?
I think, the saying, it's like it costs $0 to be kind. I don't understand the women that want to make a big scene when they're saying no, or trying to embarrass somebody, or just draw attention to the fact that they're rejecting someone. I think that's more of a look at me moment than anything. But, again, it goes back to, that's not the type of person you're wanting to date anyways, if that's their personality. But, I don't see why, women can't just say, a polite no thank you, or I have a boyfriend, whether that's true or not. It's just an easy out that nobody can really argue against.
They shouldn't argue against that, because if you've got a boyfriend and I say, what's he got to do with me? Then if she leaves him for me, then what dynamic proves that she won't leave me for the next guy that has a better proposition?
Right.
I've noticed that a lot of women use that I have a boyfriend go to, and I disagree with using that outside of a genuine I'm not interested. And just regardless of how many times he tries, just repetitively remind the gentleman that I'm not interested. Because if you're not dating somebody, then you should not perceive yourself as the fact that you are. Specifically, if you had a boyfriend, there are some women that would make it seem like they don't have the boyfriend. So if you're willing to lie about being in a relationship, you're willing to lie about not being in a relationship. So to me, that dynamic leads me to question her honesty if she's going to lie to me on first contact, because what leads me to believe that this isn't her character throughout the relationship. So I personally believe that, yes, reciprocation and rejection, because a guy might send a drink across the bar and try to use that as a catalyst to come over and start a conversation. I think that's a horrible way to do things. But if that's your game plan, guy, charge it to the game. However, for the ladies that are going to receive those drinks across the bar, instead of woo and shots on the house kind of thing, reciprocate that and say, hey, send a gentleman a drink that says thank you, but I'm not interested. So you're not indebted to him. You don't have this feeling of being indebted to him. But at the same time, you have appropriately and respectfully and quietly said no. Turning away his drink is turning away a gift, and you shouldn't do that. But reciprocating and saying, thank you for your drink. Here's a drink on me, but I'm not interested in a relationship at this time. And that allows him to sip that drink and be like, dang, but he's not at a loss. But he also understands that that type of character is hard to find, and he might find another opportunity to try to see why she's not interested. But tonight's not the night, because she's already said no. And that's one of the reasons why that no means no, alongside the Me Too movement. A woman can't say no and mean yes anymore, because no, men are terrified. I come out of Louisiana, and they passed a law where they're castrating men based on these charges. So it is terrible to get caught up accidentally when she didn't mean what she said, when she said what she said out of anger and frustration, and the man's life is over for that. So now men have to walk on eggshells, and women have said in society that society is more dangerous towards women than it is men. And I have been showing statistics lately that yes, women can come up missing in the trunk of a car or the back seat of a van with no windows in it, but that's the only type of danger that they have to deal with, like dark alleys at night kind of stuff. A guy has to worry about getting fired off of his job for a rumor, going to jail for the wrong age, going to jail for the misperception of the wrong age, going to jail for consent turning into non-consent after it already happened because he didn't get it in a contract. You know, these are the things that guys have to worry about. There's a different type of danger that men have to deal with in the current dating phase. And that type of danger, a man's character can be ruined off of a rumor. The same way when girls are teenagers and a guy makes it seem like she slept with the whole football team when she didn't. The more she says no, she didn't, the more people believes that she did. The same way, if a girl says that a guy accosted her, the more a man says that he didn't, the more people are going to believe that he did. And the fact is that a man can't bounce back from something like that. So it is terrible in this society for guys to try to approach a girl that is going to behave negatively to the engagement, because she put herself in that position deliberately. She literally put that outfit on, went to this location where there are single people so that she could attract attention. Now, the mindset of the person is different, because some people put on that outfit hoping for positive attention, not knowing that that outfit would get them negative attention. And some people put on that outfit hoping for any kind of attention because they're not getting any attention, and they're willing to accept negative attention over positive attention. And that's where we have the scantily clad outfits. You can't tell the working woman from the girl having a night out. And I keep telling guys, I'm like, we have to discourage that type of behavior. They should be able to earn positive attention from the men instead of attracting lust and desire, which would change the dynamic of the dating field. Because if I'm only approaching you because of the lustful thoughts, that is a bad approach to begin with. Because even if I'm going to pretend like I'm not hoping that something happens after this, the fact is that if I'm only going over there because of what I thought that we could do after she says yes, then my intentions are not noble. The engagement is corrupted before the engagement even starts. So for her to be negative about it on the back end, that just makes the matter worse. So now guys are like, if she's too cute, I'm not going over there. If she's too sexually attractive, I'm not going over there. Because first of all, a bunch of men should have gone over there. And if they have, she's tired of being approached. And then on top of that, since my thoughts aren't pure, before I even go over there, I don't want to seem too thirsty, drooling at the mouth, eyes popping out of my head like a cartoon character before I go over there, because she can tell the desperation, you know, and this makes it harder for guys to interact with women, because a guy is either gonna dress up in a suit or not. Like guys, there are very few non-pride style attire that men can wear where they're like outside with no shirt on, or you know, you'll never see a guy with a crotchless nothing out in the street. But you know, women are like the higher the top, the lower the cleavage, the we have a lot of stuff that we have to deal with because they have the low cut backs. We have the there's a lot of things that's going on there. And with these, the women are exposing far too much of their body, which is leading to a long standing problem. Because how is the man going to communicate with her, since she's not presenting herself the way I would have expected a female to present herself? So I've got some questions from some guys. I want you to chime in.
Exactly. I mean, you've got to leave something to the imagination.
Right. So what do you think about what women do to initiate that attraction for to be approached? Think about it. Or wait, I think she froze. Hold on, guys. Give her a second. These things happen from time to time. I see you guys popping into the show as we get Sara back on. There she is. So I was asking, it happens a lot. Usually it's on my side, so I'm glad that it's not. But the question is, Sara, what do you think about the approach that women should have to attract the right kind of attention from the first engagement? If you're still there with me. And then I'm going to see, I see Izzy here. Izzy, we were just talking about you earlier. I'm going to catch a lot of y'all's comments in here.
Hear me now?
There we go. There we go. So, as I was saying, I'm like, usually that happens to me. So I'm glad it wasn't me this time. T-Mobile internet. So everybody's dealing with internet problems because they're going to fiber optics. Buy T-Mobile stock, guys. So yeah, I soundbite everybody. Carl was just up here asking a question. I was going to do some of the questions from the comment section, but I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you heard the question, but I'm going to ask it a third time. So what is your thoughts on how women should carry themselves to attract the appropriate type of first contact engagement?
I think truly being yourself, not trying to pretend to be somebody that you're not in order to gain the attraction from somebody. Because if you don't, if you're pretending to be somebody you're not, or you're over sexualizing yourself, and that's just not your normal way of being, that's going to get exhausting to keep up with. And it's not genuine, it's not, it's not going to be a good dynamic for any party, because, mutual attraction is built on a true representation of yourself. And if you don't want that type of attraction where it's all about your looks or your sexuality, then you should probably be a little bit more modest in your, outfit choices. I'm not saying, I'm sure I might get hate for that, but, I'm not saying that women are responsible for something that happens because of their outfit choices, but,
I say that. I'm the first person. I'm a first person accountability person. So I'm gonna say that. I say that you put that outfit on, you went out there looking like that. So the attention that you're gonna get from that is what you asked for, whether you wanted that or not. So I definitely point fingers because as a man, if I want negative attention from a female, I'm going to carry myself in a certain perspective that's going to allow me to attract that negative behavior.
Yeah.
If I'm going to dress like the bad boy so that I can get the bad girl, and then when I get the bad girl and the bad girl comes with the toxic behavior, and now I have to put my bathtub out because she set it on fire like Left Eye, I ask for that. If I want that wild woman that's willing to key my car up, like that one song where she destroyed that man's car because she was angry at him. Like if I know that that's the kind of woman that I'm attracted to, because they say they want a spicy chick. I don't want a spicy chick. I want a bland chick, because if she's willing to tear up my vehicle, that vehicle is expensive. She's expendable. That car is not expendable. It takes a long time to replace one of those things. And if I knew what I was getting into when I got with her, I'm asking for trouble. So yeah, I'm going to tell a woman that when you go, do not listen to your female friends when you ask them if this is an appropriate outfit. Because if they tell you that you look hot, you look sexy, you look fantastic, you look amazing, take it off and go find something that they're not satisfied with, something that they do not approve of, because you don't look cute enough. Because if you don't look cute enough, that is perfect. That's exactly what you need to be looking like when you walk outside. Because this women's empowerment scenario where women are like, go girl for bad decisions, and then at the same time they demasculine they demasculinate men and say that you should not say anything about it, but you're putting this outfit on to attract a man. There's nothing that women do in society for social interaction that is not to attract a man. The fake hair, makeup, eyelashes, everything, the clothes you choose to put on is to attract a man. Because if you were doing this for yourself, you'd probably be outside with some t-shirts on, some sweatpants, and some socks with sandals, because that's comfortable. The way you go to bed, that's how you would live life if you wasn't doing this to attract somebody else. So, I definitely blame the outfit that her and her friends who encouraged her to put that on, because I also understand that women have peer pressure, because you might have not have put that outfit on, but 3 or 5 of your best homegirls encouraged you to put that on. We're going to go have a girls' night out. Everyone else looks like a Coyote Ugly chick. You're not that kind of person. You would prefer to be like a more librarian style, but you put that Coyote Ugly style on to accompany them with wherever they're trying to go, and they're dancing on bar stools, and that's not your style, but you're being approached by bar guys, and that's also not your style. If you wouldn't have put that outfit on, you would have stood out, but it's better to look like Velma than it is to look like a call girl. So Carl asked, what do you think about dating coworkers? I've already had a stigma about it, but what do you think about dating coworkers?
I'm not a fan.
Thank you.
If you are dead set on dating a coworker, I would highly suggest checking with your HR first, because you don't want to lose your job over a potential dating partner.
Oh, it's guaranteed you're going to lose your job. The guy is going to lose his job, guaranteed. The woman might lose her job, depending on how many times this has happened.
Yeah. So I'm just not a fan. It really just doesn't end well. Either there's going to be somebody getting fired, or it just makes a really awkward work dynamic if it doesn't work out.
So there you have it, Carl. Do not date a coworker. So if y'all work for the same company, but y'all work for different firms, like if one's on one side of town and so y'all are not interacting in the same work environment, that might be okay. But if you guys work in the same building, or if like one of you is the supervisor over the other one, definitely do not cross those lines, because it is not going to end well. Because even if the relationship is good, the breakup will destroy your employment. Not to mention, truth, you don't want to spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with your partner. No. You don't. You notice the increased quantity of breakups during COVID, because now that you have to exist with this person all day, every day, you really hate them now. Yeah. So you don't want to be in the same scenario with them all the time. Now, it's good to be in the same field, because when you come home from work, you can talk to your partner using your work lingo, and they will understand what you're talking about. So if you're both in the medical field, if you're both attorneys, y'all can talk about some stuff. But it's not okay to be too close to your partner all the time. That was what I was thinking. We weeded through a lot of these comments to make sure.
Cody has a lot to say.
Cody is insane today. Because he was like, man, he's tap dancing to Texas. He's going to town. But now he has an interesting question, because Cody is one of those individuals that I really have a fascinating experience with Cody, because he does ask appropriate questions sometimes, but he also likes to troll for entertainment too, just to see if he can redirect the conversation to something else. But he's awesome. He asks, how do you text like the first date idea? Then he's moving back to like a brass tacks idea. So what is your to formulate his question a little bit more understandably, what would your opinion be on text messaging around the first date area?
So if you're texting to ask her out on a date, like a first date specifically, come with a plan. Don't just say, do you want to hang out sometime, or I'd love to see you, because that's going to get you friend zoned pretty quickly, because you're not making your romantic intentions known. And then also going back to women, most women want a man who can lead. So, doing the back and forth, like, does Friday work? Does Saturday work? What restaurant do you want to go to? I don't know. What restaurant do you want to go to? Just keep it simple, cut out all the extra noise, and just be like very direct, have a plan. It doesn't have to be the plan that you land on, but hey, would you like to go to dinner with me at such and such place on Friday at 7? Simple, to the point. Then you guys can hash out the logistical details after the fact, but at least you're making your intentions known. It shows that you can form a coherent plan and execute it effectively.
Okay, so on that dynamic, what would you believe frequent cancellations to be interpreted as if the female accepts the date, but then she doesn't actually commit to showing up to the date? Something always comes up 2 or 3 times that she's canceled on a date. What do you think that a man should take from that?
So if she cancels and does not make an attempt to reschedule, I would take that as a sign of disinterest, and she's just not comfortable verbalizing that for whatever reason. Things come up, as things with work or an emergency, maybe she got sick. And so in that very moment, she may not be thinking about rescheduling right off the bat. But if you're noticing, 2 times, 3 times, if you're really attracted to her and you truly think that something is legitimately coming up, but beyond that, you would either just stop responding or you put the ball in her court. And even though I'm saying, men should be leading, if you've taken it to a certain level and she keeps canceling, she's either flaky, she's not interested, or she just has a lot of drama in her life that you probably don't want to invite into yours. So at that point, I would just say, put the ball in her court and just say, it sounds like you've got a lot going on. Why don't you reach out when you are ready to go on a date? And then find
I
somebody
put the
else.
ball in her court and said, well, since you canceled on the first date, you set up the second.
Yeah.
And if you never set up the second, there will not be a second.
Yeah. An ideal world would be, something came up. So sorry. How about Thursday at such and such place? Or the
Right.
same place, but different time. But
right.
Yeah, if she's not making an attempt to actively reschedule, I wouldn't expend any more energy into that dynamic.
I completely agree with that. I have found there have been some that are getting entertainment out of leading the man to the first date and trying to see exactly how far he is willing to go to set up that first date, including offering to pay for babysitters and all this other things in order to aid the woman in having the ability to present herself in the date. And some are taking advantage of that dynamic and then not showing up on a date anyway. So guys paid for the date. He's got reservations. He's paid for the babysitter, and the girl's not there. I have said there is some first person accountability on both accounts. The guy cannot voluntarily cover the entire financial aspect of things to a complete stranger. So traditionally, men are supposed to be able to fund the courting phase, but the courting phase requires active participation from the other person that is being courted. So there is still some type of value from your expense. You're not just putting out money for her time. So responsibly, since a lot of the women are working women, there should be a reasonable quantity of contribution from her. If he's covering the date, she can cover the babysitter. If he had to pay for reservations for a specific location, she should cover the reservations next time. Or I tell the guys, don't even do reservations in the first 10 dates. You should really start from let's meet in person, since most people are meeting online. And then the second date, let's, do something, like you said earlier, something quiet where we can spend the first 3 to 5 dates getting to know each other. And then once we feel comfortable with each other, we can lead ourselves into a entertainment situation. But I believe that the first 3 to 5 days should never be movies and food, because I shouldn't be feeding you and I don't know who you are. And if we're watching a movie or doing an activity, we're not learning about each other. We're only entertaining ourselves with each other's presence. And that's not what we're looking for. I appreciate you coming to the show, Carl. I'm gonna see you next time. Thank you so much.
And a lot of times with those over the top dates, it creates this illusion. And and you know, it's like on The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, where they're like flying them to Fiji for this amazing day. Of course, you're going to feel like you're in love with this person after 6 weeks.
Because you're in love with the flight to Fiji, first class on a private jet.
Real life. And then you get back and you have, you know, to scrub the toilets and pay your bills. And then it feels like a completely different scenario. So I love, you know, for the first few dates, keeping it super simple because it's a vibe check. And you want to see what the person is like without all the, you know, flashiness and the expense. So coffee, a simple lunch, I mean, that type of thing where you can just sit down and talk. And it's also an easy out. If it's, you know, you can usually tell within the first 10 minutes if you're compatible with somebody enough to where you'd want to spend more time with them. So if you meet for coffee and it's really going great, you can naturally extend that date longer, you know, if you both have the availability. If it's very apparent that you don't want to see the person again, it's an easy out. You have the cup of coffee, thank them for their time. I've got to get on with my day.
Right.
And you're not stuck at like a 5-course dinner with somebody like you.
I find that 5-course dinner, it's like, because a lot of people are saying when it comes to the show, like, oh, you know, splitting the bill, that's the way to go. And I tell myself, I'm like, yeah, that is one way to do it. Especially if you're going to reject the other person, you know, pay for your half so that I'm not wasting your time kind of thing, or pay for the whole meal. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'll just cover the bill and I'm out. Like, I can agree with that. But when you guys are courting one another, I believe that the mentality of this being a cohesive unit, instead of going Dutch the whole time, y'all should just take turns on who's paying. You do something free every other time. One person pays every other time, and the other person pays every other time. So out of 3 dates, you only paid for 1. But if you guys go on 6 dates, each of you have only paid for 1 date. So that means that if you're seeing each other every day, you both only spent money 1 time, or a large quantity of money 1 time. If you guys are seeing each other 3 times a week, you guys have seen each other all month and really only had to spend 1 time per person. Which actually, when I talk to the women about this more often than I talk to the men about it, I point out the fact that your goal is financial stability. So the lavish date actually is a red flag, believe it or not, because if he's driving an expensive car, all of his money went into the car. If he's spending all of this money to impress a stranger, that means he's wasteful with his money. If he's buying all of this stuff that has ultimately no value after the purchase, he doesn't have a good saving strategy. And if you're looking for longevity with this particular type of man, yeah, trips around the world are fantastic. But the downside that you have to this is if you start dating him, how much of your money is going to have to offset all of his wasteful spending? So if you are paying more attention to the guy, if the guy says, let's do coffee, he's operating on a budget. Let's go to the Cheesecake Factory or something like that. He's operating on a budget. You're able to see, like, it doesn't matter how much money he has. It's how much money is he willing to waste on something that is not certain. And then you can be able to determine, can I save? Can I invest with this guy? Can I build a life with this kind of person? So while you're paying attention to his personality and you're paying attention to his characteristics, how he prioritizes you, you're not being bought off. Because, and I don't understand why women don't have this feeling. Like if there's flowers and diamonds and necklaces and shoes and purses and outfits and, you know, all of I don't understand why women don't feel like they're being bought into this relationship. And then all of the allowance that you have, you're being rented throughout the relationship. And then the expensive ring, the expensive wedding, you're being bought into a marriage. And then now you're stuck until the divorce. But at no point in time did you determine that your value in this relationship, your contribution to this relationship was worth what you're getting. You're like, oh, I'm getting all this stuff. And then at the same time, you never ask yourself, what does this man want or need in the relationship? And am I willing to provide that? So when I talk to the women about this, when it comes down to the dating, you're supposed to be asking a lot of questions, because I know that women will ask the women, or the men will ask women, like, what do you like to eat? What do you like to do? What makes you happy? What kind of fun you have? And the women ask the men, what do you do for work? Where do you live? How much money you have? How much stuff you have? But y'all aren't asking the right questions. She should be asking him, what does he expect from his relationship? What does he expect his partner to perform and produce? And then the man should be asking her, what is she expecting him to compensate for? What dynamics is he supposed to be providing? Because women are equally capable as men. So women can protect themselves these days, even though men make it their duty. And women can do like 8 different ways of martial arts. And I know that a lot of women can handle a firearm better than a man. So the fact is that they don't need men for most things, because women work their way through their life to fill that void. So most women that consider themselves successful can check off everything on their list that they expect a man to do. She's already doing it before she finds a man. So now she's trying to find a man that does it better than her. So understanding that you're not finding a man that can't do it. Well, you're not finding a man that can do it better than you. You're trying to find a man that can at least do what you do, so that you can stop doing it. So again, it's the dynamic. Like, the guy needs to ask, while he's on these handful of dates, exactly what are you expecting your man to do for you? Because you could clearly be a Fortune 500 woman and knock all this stuff out yourself. So exactly what are you getting the man for? What's your dynamic on women's observation of the dating? Because I believe it's a 2-party thing. So I understand that there's the man's half of things, but to better understand the type of woman you're trying to go after, you also have to understand the woman's mentality of it. So what do you think?
Yeah, I see a lot of women talking about, especially I get emails sometimes where they're miffed when I suggest a coffee date or a simple first date. And they're like, no, I'm worth more than that. And I'm like,
to who?
Right. Like, A, you haven't proven yourself. B, your worth shouldn't be tied up on what type of date you're going on. If your priorities are in the right place, you shouldn't need somebody to prove your worth as far as like what type of fancy date they're taking you on. Your worth should already be instilled within yourself because of your own values and things that you are passionate about. So you can't rely on somebody else to prove your worth to you. But again, so a lot of my clients do feel the need, or they have gotten those reactions, like where the women were like, no, I don't want to go on a coffee date with you because, you're not spending enough money. And I'm like, okay, but again, she's showing you her personality, and she's showing you that that's not the type of person that you're wanting to date. So easy person to, cross off the list. So, I think it's, men have to just be steadfast in their own beliefs, and women also have to be steadfast in their beliefs. But I think that, there's that push and pull dynamic where we each have to be able to compromise and come together for the ultimate goal, which is seeing if we're, a good fit for one another, and take the stigma off of, how expensive the date is, who's paying for what. It's getting, the ultimate goal is just getting to know each other. And, like you said, sharing the cost of that. If a woman is that put off by fronting the cost of one date out of 3, then again, another red flag, because what are her priorities?
I've warned some people because through I do a lot of show Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. We cover finance. So today is a turn from our standard, because today we normally would be selecting a specific country that we could actually live, invest, and find more traditional women. And I cover a different country every week. And the dynamics that I have gone through with all of the investment shows that I've covered is that actually there's Mr. Satellite. I've been waiting on you all day, buddy. The dynamic that I have come to understand is that a woman that is on her priorities could actually find a man that's fiscally responsible if she's not sticking her value to the money that he's wasting on these dates. And she could find a financially responsible man. And that man doesn't have to be $100,000 a year man. And his $40, $50, $60,000 a year and her $40, $50, $60,000 a year could come together in an income that is within 90% of his income. And she could take her other 40 or 50,000 that she's not spending on the household and invest that in stocks and bonds. And I've just shown them 7 or 9 different investment strategies over the last 3 months where she could be in a relationship with this guy for 5 to 10 years and be a millionaire. And most women cannot say that they walk into a relationship with a man and walk out and he is better off because of her. Different from being better off without her. He is not better off because of her. But most women who walk away from a relationship can say that they are better off because of the relationship that they were just in, specifically because of the hypergamy theory, where women get into a relationship with a man that they believe is better than them, socially, financially, whatever, because they have to elevate themselves to be in a relationship. But if they come from the dynamic that they were elevated from the relationship, then they are not getting a man that is on their level. They're getting a man that is above their level, and they cannot identify themselves based off of how they're being treated by the other person, because that's the other person's lifestyle, not hers. If she was treating him, then that would be her lifestyle and he was joining in on that. But for her to be treated by him, that doesn't define who she is. That defines what he's willing to do for her. So I have been telling women a lot of times when they come to the show that they need to redirect their observation of how they get involved with the relationship, because they could find a more qualified suitor if they did not have that stigma where their value was based on price. And I think that if they made a little bit more of a change towards focusing on how can we benefit together as a cohesive unit, instead of what can I get out of this relationship. And that brings me to the next question, which is a lot of the women that entertain themselves with social interaction until they make it into their 30s. And then they are set in their ways based off of past traumas or negative relationships or even good relationships. And now they know what they want and they are driven to find a man that fits in their expectations. What is your observation on the need for a successful relationship for not just one, but both parties to be able to compromise and be flexible to the desires and expectations of their partner? Because I've come from the dynamic that in a relationship, your value is based off of what your partner needs, not what you believe you're valuable, because your self-worth is different from your worth to the other person that you're supposed to be contributing to in this relationship, because you guys are two halves of the same whole. So what would your perspective be on that?
I think we had kind of touched on it before, making sure that you're in a spot where you're not looking for somebody to fill a hole in your life. You're happy with your life. I'm a big proponent for therapy, especially if there's been past trauma or negative relationships that have really, brought your self-esteem or your self-worth down, because you don't want to be in a situation where you've been in a really bad relationship and then the next person you date is just okay. The bare basics of treating you well, whether it's a man or a woman. Yes, it's an upgrade from what you're used to, but that doesn't always mean that that's the best thing out there for you either. So I think, getting in a good spot where you don't need somebody to make you happy.
Right.
You are happy with yourself. You're happy with, the life that you've built, and that you're okay being alone, and just finding somebody who adds to that, and you grow together and you complement each other. Sorry, my dog is going crazy.
Your dog can join the show. I've got he's adorable. Mine went and laid down. I was waiting on him to climb into the channel real quick.
She's waiting on me to go to bed. She's like, excuse me.
Oh, the dogs will tell you when it's bedtime.
Yeah, I'm on her schedule. But yeah, you know, just getting in a spot where you know that you're not looking to be fulfilled by somebody else. You know, you're fulfilling your own needs, wants, and desires, and just adding to somebody else's life, and they're adding to yours.
Okay, so that would be a level of emotional intelligence. Now, when you say adding to the other person while being self-fulfilled, would your recommendation to your clients be in line with basically finding somebody that would exist well with them, or would you be encouraging them to pay attention to any areas of their life that would use fulfillment from another person?
You know, it could really either go both ways. I think just depending on what you're looking for and then where you are in life, you know, both dynamics could work. I'm going to get somebody to get the dog.
That's okay. We're almost done.
She's going to yap.
I've got one snoring on the left and one looking at me like, can I come over there?
So yeah, I think, you know, just as long as there's, you know, it doesn't have to be that same exactly equal wavelength, but as far as like, you know, my husband and I, the things that I'm not good at, he's good at. The things that he's not great at, I'm good at. And we, you know, make this cohesive unit where we're all, you know, working towards the betterment of each other and our
that family. Also gives the change of authority, though, because the things that you're good at, you lead on, and the things that he's good at, he leads on, and you both have the capabilities of submitting leadership when it's outside of your skill set. Yeah. But then you also understand that the things that you're not capable of doing or you're not good at accomplishing, that you can depend on your husband to fulfill that, and he can depend on you to fulfill the same. Now, when I was talking about that a moment ago, I might have expressed it differently, but when I was talking about that a moment ago, finding that person that is willing and capable to fulfill the weakest link of your objectives, that's kind of what I was referring to. And I come to understand that there are some people that once they reach middle age, they're less willing to compromise to overcome the weaknesses of their partner. And that was the dynamic that I was asking you about.
Yeah, I can get that. Yeah, you're kind of more set in your ways. It's like you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Right. So how do you overcome that?
Mindset shifts. I mean, if you're wanting a relationship, there has to be some give and take for both sides, you know, and it's not that you have to give up your identity. You know, remain focused on your, you know, your core values, but you realize that, you know, maybe older age, you know, couples that you're not going to be dating with 21-year-old like you thought you might be. Right. So that would be a compromise, but a reasonable compromise. You're not changing, you know, your politics or your religion to settle for somebody because you feel, you know, a sense of desperation. So, you know, I think it's, you know, a bit of a reality check. And that's where, you know, I can be very, not blunt. I'm kindly blunt in my delivery, but you know, some guys do, and some women, you know, I've called out the women on here too. They need a bit of a reality check because it's not all about you. If you're wanting a partner, you know, it's gonna be a meshing of two worlds, but for the ultimate betterment of both parties. But you've got to kind of get over yourself a bit, both men and women, to, you know, make all that work.
Fantastic. Well, I understand that you have to get running. I had so many more questions I was going to ask you, but I was like, look at the time. She's been here for 2 hours. I didn't tell her how long this was going to be. So I apologize for the extensive delay. Okay. I really appreciate you coming to the show tonight. If you guys have any more questions for Sara, you guys, there's a link up there. You guys can schedule a consultation with her. There's also, hold on, let me put the link back up there. You guys also can get one of those complimentary strategy sessions. There's a link it's streaming across the bottom of the screen right now that you guys can see for that. She does have 12-week coaching programs that allows you guys to be able to learn a lot more from her whenever you guys have the opportunity. And if you remind her that you got the information from this and that, she'll work you guys out with the price. So make sure to pay attention to that. So we also have her Instagram at dating.with.courage, and then her TikTok, which I do not use TikTok until America owns it. But she's got a TikTok that is at Dating with Courage. So you can go to either one of those and follow her channel and get more information from her over the years, because it looks like this is something she's going to be doing for quite a while. As she said earlier in the show, she has a whole team. So if you want her exclusively, you got to request Sara. But if you don't care who gets it, you can contact Sara and she can match you with somebody who has the time and availability to provide you guys with the information that you need to be more successful men. One more. He said 12:51. Yeah, I know. That's why we're wrapping it up. So what I want to say is, on our way out the door, is that as long as the situation doesn't make sense, ladies, I always ask y'all to make it make sense. So ladies, please make it make sense. Fellas, we're 75% male podcast. It's a male-driven podcast from the male's perspective. And today we have a woman's point of view. And it was ironic that her point of view was my point of view. So I am enthusiastic about how these shorts are going to go out. I was not expecting anything controversial from you, but you definitely hit a lot of controversial topics. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome because I didn't say it. She said it.
I'm the bad guy now.
Oh, no. You're not the bad guy. You said what I would have said. And I have said it before. So next time I say it, I'm going to be like, I'm not the only person who says this.
People said
you can hate me, but we're a team now. You can hate all of us the same way. Make note, Izzy was up here earlier. He really appreciated you coming. Mr. Satellite said hello. Cody said thank you for the advice for the text messaging thing. Carl said that he really appreciated your ability to spend time with us tonight, but he has to go take care of his family. So I want to thank all of you guys who came to the show and asked the questions. I know Bayside was supposed to be here, but I think him and his wife had something going on with the kids. So I'm going to explain to him about what happened tomorrow when we start talking about which country we're going to invest in. And Izzy, the other gentleman that's supposed to be collaborating with me on this Friday, he said that he really appreciated the conversation. So he thanked you for coming to the show as well. So wasn't expecting what I got today, but I knew that I was going to get something. And you were fantastic. So I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate all of your time. Do you have any questions for me before we walk out of the show today?
No, thanks again for having me, and thanks for all the questions and guests. And I will be sure to tune into your podcast now that I know that you do it every single day.
Every single day. So if in the event that you want to dive back in again on any of the other topics that we have, especially Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we do social improvement, personal improvement, relationship improvement. Sunday is questions and comments from the fans. So we have a lot of random statements that come from the comments that I go through. I don't typically read them before I turn them into an audio file. So a lot of them I have no idea the left field conversation that they're going to take this into, especially the lengthy ones. And then I provide them with my observation of how that should have went, because apparently the comment is usually a one-sided comment from the person. They're not understanding why they are in the situation that they're in, because they're not considering the other person, regardless of if the comment comes from a male or a female. And then I come from a universal perspective that if you put yourself in the other person's shoes on the receiving end of how you feel, then you might come to understand a different dynamic where you could recognize your error in the situation, because it takes two people to come together, but it also takes two people or more, when you start talking about cheating, to fall apart. But and long relationships have phases where you guys fall out of love with one another because you forgot to prioritize each other, and then you start looking for that love outside of the relationship, and then you remember why you got into this relationship in the first place, and you guys come together. The longer the relationship, the higher the probability that infidelity occurs. There's never a relationship that's 40, 50 years in existence where somebody didn't cheat on somebody by accident or on purpose. So you have to look at the dynamic that if you spend more time prioritizing each other, you reduce the likelihood of infidelity in a relationship, because that is motivated from a need that is not being met if it's a long-standing relationship. Now, if you're dealing with a person that wasn't committing to begin with, the cheating might happen in the beginning of the relationship, but that's a red flag that you should address before you get into a long-standing relationship. But if you guys were solid for the first 5 or 10 years of your relationship, and now things are not looking well, this moment in your relationship is where infidelity might manifest. So if you're not working on fixing your relationship, then you might find yourself in that type of situation, whether you're being cheated on or you're being the cheater. So redirecting your attention to your partner and compromising and communicating. Open communication is one of the biggest things that we talk about on the show, that if you said something instead of just wallowing about it by yourself, you might have been able to make a change. But you recognize that if you're in a relationship where you're unhappy and your partner knows about it and they're not proactively trying to do something about it, you understand that is when it is time to stop. But until you reach that moment, you should always try to negotiate with your partner and work things out and compromise from a third person perspective. Remove your emotions and feelings out of the problem and talk about the problem. It's not what you did or what I did. If the car is broken, that's what we're talking about. Not you broke it or I didn't fix it. The car is broken because the car is broken. Now, what do we do to fix the car and not let the car get broken again? Stuff like that. Instead of the fault and blame scenario, which leads to an argument where people sandbag their feelings and never talk about it, and then we throw it up in this argument, but we're just bashing each other instead of fixing the problem. I don't care about how we got here. I want to fix the problem, so we're not going to stay here. And that's what I encourage everybody to do, because I believe that would be more effective. So if in the event that you ever want to slide back into the show, if you want to chime back in, if you're available and the conversation tickles your fancy, I always throw a link into the show where you can dive in at your leisure. So anybody who came to the show could have jumped on with us, and then we would have had like a 3-way picture-in-picture kind of thing. But you are always welcome to come back whenever you feel like it. And if in the event that you've got a special event or activity that's coming up, he said, a blade. Okay. If in the event that you have some type of special event or something like that, that you want to drop into the show later on, you can always just let me know, and we can pitch it for you while we're up here. So just let me know, and we'll take good care of you. I will be putting all of Sara's links into the show after the show finished processing. So you guys will see a lot of these links in the comment section. You'll see them up top. You'll see them in the description after the show closes out. If you guys have any more questions, if you want to reach out to Sara, leave comments in the comment section. I'll put you guys directly to Sara so that you guys can follow up and get more information. With that being said, that's all I have for you guys for tonight. I want to thank y'all for coming to This and That. Thank you so much, Sara, for coming to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. We typically start, when we don't have Sara, we start at about 10:35. But I wanted to respect and prioritize her time, because we were supposed to do it at 9, and now we're doing it at 10. So typically, Sara, you'll see us tee off at about 10:35 every other day out of the week. So I look forward to hearing you in the comment section if I don't see you again. Thank you guys again. And any comments that come through that are appropriate, Cody, you'll see those featuring in the outro. Beyond that, I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Have a good night, Sara.
Bye. Good night.
That's my personal command.